in 19. How much is that $14 an hour worth that I started at? How much is that worth today? And the reality is it's worth like $38 an hour at top rate back then. So the wages have actually slowed down. Some of that's healthcare costs, but also some of it's the fact that the trucking industry has so many non-union carriers that they have to compete with. When I started, the LTL, the less than truckload carriers, were 85% unionized. 85% of the trucks that were LTL trucks were unionized. Those were drivers who were making superior wages, incredible benefits, retirement security, a voice on the job, all of that stuff. And what's happened since deregulation and all of the attack on workers, you've seen that go away. And this is one of those times where I'm happy to see that there's a discussion happening about what working conditions are today. And I say this all the time. When I started working, the 8-hour day was sacrosanct. Didn't matter where you went. The 8-hour day was sacrosanct, and you got paid overtime after 8. That's pretty much gone unless you have a union contract. Oh, and by the way, under this job, still after 8, union contract, overtime, double time on your 7th punch, double time on holidays, all that stuff. So the question becomes, why is there so much money? Why is there so much social media, so much attention put into unions are bad for you? What unions give you the opportunity to do is to shape your workplace. So when I hear people say, well, we can't have flexibility. Sure you can. You can negotiate for that. If that's important, you sit down, you bargain for that. And if unions were that bad, given the fact that no one ever has to be a member, why would anyone be a member? See, this is the dirty little secret. Even before Janus, even before Trump and his Supreme Court decided that they were going to make the entire country a right-to-work country for public sector workers, you didn't have to join a union. You didn't have to be a member. You simply had to pay for the negotiated contract, where if you got something, which superior wages, incredible health benefits, retirement security, you had to pay for the enforcement of that contract. This contract is power. It lays out every bit of employment. And this is the thing that gets me. I'm old enough to remember where employers would actually seek unions out because, you know what? They do a pretty good job of laying their HR department out. And I watched as the war on workers began and ramped up and destroyed what was a family-sustaining industry in the trucking industry. It's now something of a sweatshop on wheels. We're reverting back to the horror stories. I hear the same kind of stories from guys today that I heard from my grandparents when they started off in the industry. Being gone weeks at a time. Their checks not being there on time, not being paid for any of the downtime, not being paid for any of the waiting time while they're waiting to be loaded or unloaded, not being paid for deadhead time, not getting paid for anything other than when the wheels are turned. And they've convinced us that that's the right thing. And it's the same thing with these freelancers. I get all these, well, I'm my own boss. I can set my own schedule. Yeah, but you don't have health care. You don't have retirement security. You don't have unemployment security. You don't have workers' comp. You don't have anything. You don't have any of that stuff. You're responsible for all of the costs. If something breaks down, you fix it. If something doesn't work, you fix it. If you have to give up time, that's on your dime. And what Biden is saying is, look, we want to restore that American dream. We want to restore that bit of work hard, play by the rules, get ahead. We want people to get ahead. We want people to do better. The idea that when we do better, we all do better. And it comes back to the jobs. I love the fact that when Joe Biden stepped up to the microphone, he said, I'm a union guy. Because he knew what that meant. And I go back to my childhood. When I saw people leave the housing project I grew up in, it was because they got good union jobs. So, as a kid, I saw a union job, better life. Opportunities, food at the end of the month. So for those naysayers, and look, as I'm watching the messaging go on, it's well coordinated. So it's telling me that it's not we the people, that it's a handful of people who are being paid, a handful of folks who are, this is their gig. They're soulless. So as I look at this, I'm hoping the Democrats take this moment, keep the PRO Act in the infrastructure bill, and move forward on it. And understand, there's no bipartisanship. The Republicans are not, let me reiterate, they are not going to help. So it's time for us to call our representatives early, often, and remind them. We'll remember come election time. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, Representative Andy Levin's going to be here to share some thoughts on the bill. Quick break, right back.
Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1946. That was the day 400,000 bituminous coal miners walked off the job in 26 states. They demanded higher wages, better health benefits, and safety regulations. The strike began to cripple industrial operations nationwide. By May 22nd, President Harry S. Truman seized the mines. Miners returned a week later. John L. Lewis, president of the United Mine Workers, signed an agreement with Secretary of the Interior Julius Krug. It included wage increases and vacation pay, the 5-day work week, and contributions to a retirement fund. The strike led to the Promise of 1946, otherwise known as the Krug-Lewis Amendment. It created the UMWA Health and Retirement Funds. It is this fund that is often referred to in present-day discussions concerning the loss of retiree health and pension benefits. According to Robert Hartley and David Kenny, authors of Death Underground, the Centralia and West Frankfort mine disasters, the welfare program was to provide medical care, rehabilitation treatment, and death benefits. It provided the authority for the director of the U.S. Bureau of Mines to establish a federal mine safety code, to enforce mine safety regulations, and provided the first legal authority for federal inspectors to close mines found to be dangerous. Lack of enforcement would prove deadly for miners in Centralia and West Frankfort. The health and welfare funds, however, provided relief and security for miners for decades. But in recent years, many companies have gone out of business and found legal loopholes to shed their retirement responsibilities. Those miners affected are today fighting for the passage of the Miners Protection Act, which would provide access and funding to shore up the pension plan. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So look, as I've been saying, they're going to try everything they can possibly do to derail this infrastructure bill. And one of the things being thrown out right now is this SALT, the state and local tax issue that they're trying to divide Democrats on. And I said, look, for me, I don't really care about it. I think it's okay where it's at. We could do some adjustments so it doesn't hit working people in New York and California and New Jersey. But when you're talking about some of the people at the top end, you're missing me. But some of those working class folks in New York City, we can make some adjustments to it. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the infrastructure plan and, how we're going to get this stuff through. I've got Michigan Representative Andy Levin to come talk with us. Andy's on the Education and Labor Committee, also the House Foreign Relations Committee. Andy, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, it's great to be with you, Rick.
So, I'm looking at yesterday's speech, historic moment in my view. What I'm not shocked at is the number of people who were for a $2 trillion infrastructure plan before they were against it.
Yeah, this is something that we just must do if we want to have people employed in this country, if we want to compete with China, if, we want to be effective. It's as if somebody had a house and they're like against having a driveway and stairs. It's like you have to take care of your property. We haven't been doing it for decades. And now we can put a lot of people to work in great jobs. So let's go. I'm proud of our president and ready to move.
Yeah, I see. I'm of the mindset. I would have liked to have been a little bit bigger, but you know what? Yeah. I'm happy with it. This is a good start. It's a lot better than we've done over the last, as you said, a couple of decades. And we've got so much that needs to be done. And especially now coming out of this pandemic, if we can whip this. This would be a great boost to move the economy forward in the aftermath.
No doubt. I'm with you 100%. I mean, Elizabeth Warren and I put out a proposal for $1.5 trillion of federal procurement over the next 10 years to green the economy and put a lot of people to work. We've got a electrification bill, the Build Green Act. I've got my EV Freedom Act to put a national network of high-speed chargers throughout the highway system. This is a moment when we're facing an unprecedented multitude of crises. And, it's interesting that I hear that the president's been sort of studying up on FDR. I'll tell you, Rick, one thing he's taken from FDR, those of us who are progressives, they are not telling us to shut up. They're not asking us, please get in line. I was at the White House last week with 3 of my progressive colleagues, and the chief of staff said, we want your partnership. We want you to speak your mind. And I think they see that having a movement to demand workers' freedom to form unions, to demand $15 an hour, to demand infrastructure in every sense of, give me broadband. Don't just talk about roads, bridges, and sewers. We need all that, but we need broadband. We need offshore wind. We need solar. We need geothermal. We need battery storage. We need to onshore manufacturing again. So let's go. Let's put people to work in this country.
No, I'm right there with you. But here's the thing. I look at someone like McConnell. I look at the Republicans right now, and I think, I remember a time when infrastructure was nonpartisan, not bipartisan. It was nonpartisan.
Yeah.
You guys would go, you would get your projects to bring home. You had ribbon cuttings. It was great. We got roads paved. We got potholes fixed. It was the golden era of Congress. When did infrastructure become now a highly partisan issue?
I get right now everything is, and it's so sad because it's just as you say. If there's any definition of bringing home the bacon, it's about getting projects done in your district, whether it's a new train station or getting, the lead lines fixed. He's saying he's going to get rid of lead service lines altogether. That's amazing. Everybody should be jumping for joy there. But you're right. They've made it a partisan issue. And you look at the fresh polls out, it is wildly popular, right?
No, and I said from the beginning, I think that, again, this is political because I think what the Republicans understand is once people start getting jobs and those jobs are good union jobs with the kind of wages and benefits that union workers earn, they tend to be a little bit happier. They can pay their bills, put a roof over their head, start planning for the future, maybe kids going to college, maybe stuff like that. And they tend not to vote for people who are against that kind of stuff. And I got to tell you, I think that's a big component of this.
No question. I mean, what I've been saying for a long time is I'm tired of making speeches about all the things we want. People don't really care about all the niceties of weird Senate processes. They want their $15. They want their freedom to form a union. They want their good job with good benefits, good wages, and a dignified retirement. That's really all people want. And if we deliver it to them, you're right. They'll vote for us because, and a lot of these divisive things, we'll be able to overcome. Because, we got to serve the whole working class, black, white, brown, Native American, everybody, Asian American, gay, straight, native born immigrant. Let's go. Workers. We're all workers. Give people a good job.
Well, and this is what I say. I think the unions have done a good job over the last couple of decades. My contract doesn't say the white guy makes this much and the black guy makes this much and the woman makes this much. It says the person doing this job makes this much. It's very clear. It's cut and dry. It's in black and white. You can't argue it. Which is why I'm a big supporter of unions. I think a lot of our problems could be solved with workers having contracts, the transparency that comes with it, the empowerment that comes with a union contract.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, if you look at the difference between women and men, between black workers and white workers and Latinx workers, they're much lower when workers have unions. And it's all transparent. Like you say, everybody has a contract. It's the same contract for everybody. Equal pay for equal work becomes a reality when you're a Teamster or a machinist or a service employee or whatever union you might be in. So, let's just give workers the freedom to form unions. This struggle in Bessemer has been amazing, Rick, in terms of, I've never seen something. It's like a global cause celeb. People, the Japanese press and the Turkish press are covering this live. I mean, they don't know what to do because it's a slow process now to count the votes.
Right.
They counted, and the press is like calling me. I say, I got nothing to say.
Yeah,
Because
I'm waiting like everybody else. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But you know what I think? I think this has been a good thing. I think watching what happened in Alabama, I think a lot of people weren't aware of how horrible conditions are when people try to exercise their rights, which is why we need something like the PRO Act, which is why I was a big supporter of the Employee Free Choice Act, even though I didn't think that went far enough back during the Obama term. You know, something George Miller thought that George W. Bush would sign. We didn't even get that. So what do you think the chances are of getting something like the PRO Act pushed through? I know it's passed the House, and I know the Senate is where good ideas go to die, but what do you think the chances of that being left in when they move the final infrastructure plan?
I mean, let's take a broader look, right? Jimmy Carter tried to pass labor law reform. 2 Democratic senators from Arkansas refused to vote for it. It died. Bill Clinton didn't even try. He had a blue ribbon commission to study it. That was a bad news for the working class. It was good news for me personally because I got to be the staff attorney for that commission, and I learned a lot. But you know, and then Barack Obama, you know, the Employee Free Choice Act. How much political capital did he really put into that? So we have not passed any labor law reform that makes it easier for workers in the private sector to form a union or bargain collectively since the National Labor Relations Act itself in 1935.
Right.
I mean, that's a shameful thing for our country. And meanwhile, there's been death by 1,000 cuts. Federal laws passed, state laws passed, federal court decisions, state court decisions, administrative actions on both levels that chip away at workers, right? Oh, you're an independent contractor, you're a temp worker, you don't have this right. Let's take some rights away from undocumented workers. You know, right to freeload and, you know, state after state building, and to the point where lots of workers aren't even covered by anything. And the NLRA doesn't have any teeth anyway. So we've got to pass the PRO Act if we want to rebuild the middle class in this country. There's no 2 ways about it. We cannot deal with wealth and income inequality unless workers have these powers that the PRO Act would give them. And I think it's going to take a movement, dude. I don't think just us having, you know, persuasive talk in the halls of Congress is going to do it. I would like to think that. And I really think Joe Biden is more committed to this than any president in modern times. So that's awesome.
Yep.
But, you know, corporate America, this is the hill they will die on. I mean, because they know that if workers have more voice and power in society, everything else gets better. Right? I mean, then workers vote for candidates that will support them. Workers get their own education system going to figure out which candidates actually advance their interests. Then they vote for those people. You know, with all the talk of union members voting for Trump, it's true, too many did, no question. But you name a demographic, and I've got the data that shows that that union members in that demographic voted less for Trump than non-union, right? Even white men, white male non-union voted for Trump more than white male union members. Same for every category. So we've got to, you know, win this, but it's going to be a battle.
No, I'm with you. But, you know, I said, you know, all along, Trump was talking the talk of the labor movement at the time. We've got to do something about trade. We've got to take on China. We've got to rebuild manufacturing. We've got to rebuild infrastructure. And this is something that I think Biden is doing in this infrastructure bill. We're going to rebuild manufacturing by bringing some jobs back to rebuild our infrastructure. And those are going to be union jobs. And it's going to be a lot of in rural communities, those communities that have been left behind, where opioid addiction has taken over, where crumbling main streets have been the norm. And it's going to give people, I hope massive investment, an opportunity to rebuild that American dream, that ideal of if I work hard and play by the rules, I'm going to get ahead.
100%. It's just what has to happen, and it's absolutely what he's trying to get done. Right. And you know, it's great to be rowing in the same direction.
Yeah, but here's where my problem with Democrats is. I want Democrats, guys like you, who roll up your little digits and get in there, throw punches. I want the whole party throwing in that same direction, because for too long we've had too many corporate Democrats who have sold the working class out. My
Oh,
fear is the PRO Act is the first thing that gets thrown out of this to make, who knows? I'm not gonna pick any senators out right now, but to make somebody happy to appease them, and that's what, like, the $15 an hour minimum wage got thrown out. That's my
yep.
fear.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And that's why people have to hit the streets. That's why people have to hit the phones. I mean, and that's why Bessemer is so important, because win or lose, it has changed the dynamic. You know, I mean, a loss shows that we've got to pass this, or else there's no hope. I mean, the biggest employer in this country in the private sector, Walmart, 1.3 million workers, not exactly the greatest job in the world. And how many are union members? Zero out of 1.3 million. Amazon, no union members in the US. This would be the first group to form a union. So, it shows it. And if they win, I tell you what, Rick, it's almost like the days in the 30s before the Wagner Act was passed, with the first stirrings of what became the CIO.
Yep.
And they organized and they sort of put pressure for change. I see workers organizing, like, on digital media. People are organizing. I see people organizing in unusual parts of the economy. And look, everybody knows. Don't tell me Bezos was like, "Oh, you make $15 an hour. Shut up and stop complaining." Everybody has health insurance, right? It's like, dude, you know what? This is warehousing. $15 an hour isn't such a great wage here. And anyway, I'm a human being. Like, I have to pee sometimes.
Yeah.
I have to eat sometimes.
Here's a nice bottle.
I mean, when they said, "Oh, get real, nobody pees in a bottle at Amazon," did you see the outpouring, pun intended, I guess, of workers just stepping forward and saying, "What is this guy talking about? Every driver has a bottle in their truck. Everybody pees." And that woman said, "I use a Shiwi."
Yeah. No. And look, they actually put out a memo saying stop dumping in the bag.
Right.
So it's not even just number one. They're doing two too.
Don't leave your full pee jar in the truck at the end of your shift. I mean, come on.
No, it's crazy, and I'm hoping that that the light that was shed on that is going to give us some movement forward. Now, Marty Walsh, the new labor secretary, I'm hoping he's going to wield some power. Got to be honest, you were my second choice for that job. My first choice we're going to have on a little bit later, Sara Nelson, president of the Association of Flight Attendants. But I think Marty Walsh is a good guy for it. I want to get your impression.
Well, I didn't know Marty Walsh before, but when, once he was nominated, I called him right up and I said, "I'm behind you 100%, whatever you need." I think he seems like a great guy, very straightforward. I think he's going to be, a great ambassador for the president and a real, champion for workers, and that workers have to be at the center of all policy decisions.
Now, how much power is he going to be able to wield, though, given the fact that our labor laws are so badly broken, and if we don't get the PRO Act, how much can he do you think?
Well, one of the ironies is that, and this was when when they were talking about me. I mean, we were, my thing to them was, look, we have a weird system in this country. The labor laws that govern all private sector workers, namely the National Labor Relations Act and the Railway Labor Act, those laws are run and enforced by quasi-judicial agencies that are not political. So the president doesn't really have a political lieutenant. So I was saying the Secretary of Labor needs to, be seen as a real lieutenant to transform our laws on those issues. The labor secretary is more over job training, pensions, international labor standards, wage and hour, all super important stuff, So I do hope that Marty steps up and says, "You know what? I'm going to be the president's champion on workers' rights in terms of collective bargaining, not just the employment law stuff." But I think he'll do a great job.
Yeah, I hope so as too. But the reality is I want the Labor Department to move in promoting people's right to join and form unions, and I want a National Labor Relations Board that's going to enforce those rights and protect people. And we got to figure out how to make this a lot shorter than what we saw happen in Bessemer.
100%. I mean, The PRO Act would get the employer out as a party. The employer would no longer be a party to the election. The workers would decide where to have the election. Amazon tried to force them to have an in-person election in the middle of a COVID hotspot. How outrageous was that? So that would be up to the workers. The timeline for the election would be a lot faster. By the way, there's also a timeline for first contracts. Within about 6 months, workers would have a first contract. That's revolutionary because in almost half the cases, when workers go through all the hell of forming a union under the current law, they never get a first contract.
Yeah.
And if you never get a contract, you don't really have the fruit of your labor there. So that's huge. Real financial penalties, both for the company and for the individual corporate officers. And even more important than penalizing them, if they fire Rick Smith because he was a leader of the union drive, the NLRB can put Rick right back on the job. And that is, they don't really fire you because they care about you. They're trying to scare all your brothers and sisters.
The chilling effect. You're spot on, right? Which is why we need this to happen and we need this to get pushed through. Rep. Levin, I appreciate you taking some time for us. Great talking with you. I hope you'll come back and talk to us again.
Absolutely. Have a good evening. Take care.
Great stuff, Representative Andy Levin. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1963. That was the day that the New York Times ran the headline, "New York happy as papers return." The longest and largest newspaper strike in the city had ended. During the early 1960s, changes in typesetting technology were transforming how newspapers were made. Members of the International Typographical Union worried the technology would undermine their work. Around 2 in the morning on December 8th, 1962, ITU Local 6 called for a strike, demanding improved wages. Members were mostly Irish, Italian, and Jewish men. The newspaper workers at 4 papers, including the New York Times, walked off the job. 3 more major papers feared their workers would join the strike and preemptively locked out their workers. Newspapers were part of the fabric of social life of the Big Apple. In 2009, well-known journalist Nora Ephron described the impact. It was like part of the blood supply of the city was cut off. Funerals in the city saw a dip in attendance as obituaries went unprinted. In all, 17,000 newspaper workers, from typesetters to reporters to elevator operators, participated in the work action. The strike lasted 114 days. 600 million newspapers were not printed. The strike cost newspaper owners $100 million in lost advertising revenue. In the end, the strike was finally settled, and the workers won a wage increase. But they did not win any guarantee against the implementation of new industry technology. A few months after, the newspaper The Daily Mirror closed up shop, blaming the workers and the strike for deepening its existing financial troubles. And not surprisingly, both the Times and the Herald Tribune used the strike as an excuse to double the price of a newspaper from a nickel to a dime.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
I gotta tell you, I really like that guy. If we had more representatives like Andy Levin in Congress, and maybe, I should put it this way, if we had more people like Andy Levin in the Senate, which is where we need them, because every good idea seems to go to die in the Senate. And I fear the PRO Act is one of those things, just like the $15 an hour minimum wage, that gets chucked out to make one of the conservative Democrats happy. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on how big it is that the PRO Act was included in this infrastructure bill and why we need to do, as Andy Levin said, get in the streets, make the calls, get active around it. I've asked our good friend Sara Nelson to come talk with us. Sara is the president of the Association of Flight Attendants, CWA. Sara, thanks for taking time for us.
I'm always happy to be on the Rick Smith Show.
And it's always great to have you. I've been from the beginning. I've been saying I want this PRO Act included in the infrastructure bill, and Joe Biden listened.
It's incredible. It's like you've got a direct line there, Rick. Direct line.
Direct line. Because, hey, look, I asked him to fire Peter Robb day one, and he did it.
Yeah. Hey, keep making asks. Keep making demands. We need you making demands. No, and seriously, I do want to just note that for anybody listening, we got to make demands on everyone. We have to be realistic. So there's two different things going on here when we talk about things going to die in the Senate and not counting on Republicans, all that. We have to be realistic about what we have seen up till now. And we have to have Democrats be willing to act without Republicans. But I don't want people out there listening to be confused about what our job is. We don't give up on anyone. We put the pressure on everyone. We put the screws to everyone. Because if we write off Mitch McConnell, let's take anyone else in his caucus, we are essentially saying that we don't care about the workers in that state or in a congressional district if it's a Republican in the House. And that's just not true. We're going to stand up for everybody. So we're going to put the pressure on everyone. And I think that is what is so great about what's happening in Bessemer, actually, is that, we have been raising the narrative about why we need workers' rights. And I have to tell you, of course we need the PRO Act. It's way better than EFCA. EFCA was all about, trying to get more membership. The PRO Act is all about giving power to working people. And restoring the full right to strike, making sure that you can get to those first contracts, getting rid of right to work for less laws, and really putting power back in the hands of working people. But, most people don't even know what a union is. When I say, I'll see you at the table, they're like, is there going to be turkey there? I don't know what that means. They don't know what union means. They don't know what collective bargaining means. We have to do a good job of helping the public understand what it means. But I'll tell you what, they can understand it when they start to hear about the stories from the Amazon warehouse and not even being able to go to the bathroom or getting a ding if you're not touching a box soon enough, and having more of a relationship with an app than any human being. Hiring $3,500 a day consultants to try to interfere with your rights. It's exactly like the voter suppression efforts going on around the country. The two are exactly the same. This is about not wanting to give any power to individuals, to individual people, to the working people in this country. And so people are seeing that now. And so the PRO Act is actually coming alive for people. This isn't just some academic exercise about whether or not we're going to, sign enough cards for something. This is about actually interfering with the right of people to stand up and say, I'm not going to take it anymore. I'm not going to take this crap anymore. And by the way, $15 an hour is not enough to live in Birmingham or in Bessemer. And it's not enough for the job that I'm doing, standing on my feet all day long for 10 and 12-hour shifts where you're yelling at me if I don't touch a box every 8 seconds. So, this is really bringing it to life for people. And I think that's why the PRO Act is moving. And then I got to say, it's smart of the president to put the PRO Act in this infrastructure bill. And, whether or not it actually gets through that way, Rick, what we're doing is we are raising the stakes here.
We're educating.
We are defining the problem. Absolutely. Defining the problem that we have today with the inadequate, watered down, horseshit labor law that exists today in this country and needs to be fixed if we're actually serious about living in the land of the free.
You're right. One of the things, and I talk to new members all the time, one of the things that I always talk about is this sense of empowerment. The wages are better. The healthcare is better. The retirement security is better. All of that's better. It's the empowerment. And when I was driving a truck all those years, I tell my truck driving friends, I went out, the brakes were out of aligned. It didn't move until it was fixed. If the lights weren't working, didn't move till it was fixed. If there was something wrong mechanically with that truck, it did not move until it was fixed. I was empowered to do that. And I talk to a lot of non-union drivers. They're shocked by that because they're told, take it or go home. And to me, it's that empowerment that you get from having a contract that says, this is what it is, and this is how you can defend yourself, and having a grievance procedure to help protect yourself.
Yep. On the safety items, we have whistleblower protections that exist. That exists because unions fought for that. But do you think a worker actually has whistleblower protections in their job if they don't have a union to back them in using those whistleblower protections? No, of course not. So I just also want to give a shout out to the flight attendants at Envoy Air who got a tentative agreement today in the middle of coronavirus. I want to note that this is an example of what it means to have a union in the middle of a crisis. Not only did our union make sure that this crisis didn't get put on our backs because we made demands on what the relief package was going to look like, and we got those demands met even under a Trump-McConnell regime, because we had enough power with 80% of the aviation workers in a union. We had enough power to do what most people would say was impossible. But beyond that, so I said, listen, we got to set the narrative that workers are not going to pay for this crisis because, the corporate elite will never let a good crisis go to waste.
Absolutely. They'll fill their coffers. You know that.
Absolutely. And so we set that tone. We said, no, we're not going to pay for this. But today, I'm so happy that we got this tentative agreement at Envoy because not only are we saying we're not going to pay for this, flight attendants at Envoy Air now are going to get to vote on improvements in the middle of this pandemic still. We're getting improved, and they should get improvements. I'm not saying that that's an incredible thing, but if you look at what's happening across the country, what worker is actually getting a pay raise right now? And it's only where you see unions that's happening.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's only ones that people have contracts. And I always point out that every CEO in the country has a contract. If the boss has got one, you should have one too. But this goes back to the beginning, the war between capital and labor. The boss is never going to be your friend. I say this all the time. These companies that we have contracts with, they're good companies. They're nice. They work with us. We do all that stuff. They're not benevolent. They didn't give you this stuff out of the goodness of their heart because they think you're wonderful. They gave it to you because you fought for it, demanded it, and generations before you did that, which is why I think it's important to remember our history, but also to pull people in to, as you pointed out, be much more militant.
Absolutely. I got to tell you, I'm talking about the 50-year anniversary of the book Strike by Jeremy Brecker. And I have a piece in the beginning here that I wrote to start off the 50th anniversary, along with Kim Kelly, who also wrote a piece that I just read again today. It's really fantastic. But we are talking about this on Tuesday. And what this book is really about is saying we have to know our history as working people because it's not taught in the schools. Because who is deciding what's in the curriculum in our schools? It's not people who want us to know what the kind of power that working people have when we come together.
Right.
And so, we it's really on us to help people understand the kind of power that we have and what our history is and what we have today because of what people fought for and died to get, and what is at risk of being taken away if we don't organize like they did in the 1930s and 40s.
No, you're absolutely right. I tell new members all the time, you don't take for granted what you have today because you may give it away. People fought for this. People bled and died for it. And I look at the National Master Freight Agreement, which I worked under most of my life. I actually knew people who had their heads split open on picket lines fighting to get the things that we take for granted. You're absolutely right. But on the labor history part of it, it's part of the reason that we do labor history in too. It's one of those things that I thought, years ago, we wanted to get little tidbits out to remind people that, hey, on this day, something happened where a worker struggled and, either they won or they lost, but they still put up a fight. Because at the end of the day, you still got to ball up your digits and get in there and take a couple of punches, which is why I've always been such a fan of yours, because you're someone who, I'll be honest, I wouldn't want to meet you in an alley.
Neil Cavuto said the same thing to me a couple of weeks ago, but
there you go. Look at that. I didn't mean to be anywhere near him, but I guess you should take that to heart.
Yeah, no, I took that as a badge of honor. So, listen, we've got to be fighting. Mother Jones said, you will fight and lose, fight and win, but you must fight. And when people know that you're fighting for them, they're going to come along with you and we're going to build power. A lot of people think that power is a limited resource, but the truth is that every time we act on our power, we actually increase it exponentially because other people see the results of that and they want to be a part of it and they're empowered by it. And once you get a taste of that, you won't settle for a bad deal and you won't stand by while someone else gets screwed either. And that's the whole idea behind union. And once people really get that feeling of solidarity and how powerful that is and how much it means in their hearts. This is usually what people are searching for in their whole lives and searching for it. And we have the answers for them in unions. So it's our responsibility. A lot of times I say I need a union for my union because you don't really get vacations when you are union activists. But that's okay, because the kind of fulfillment and energy and inspiration and rejuvenation that you get from being a part of helping people find their own power and make a difference in their lives, in their family lives, in their communities is better than any pina colada on the beach. And so, so anyway, this is something that it was amazing to go down to Bessemer and talk with the workers there and talk with them about how their lives and their mission in life has changed in the course of a couple months, because they've seen the way that they can work themselves to empower other people. And there's just nothing like it. And I have to tell you, I think they're going to win. I think we're going to have the results tomorrow. But if we don't win this vote, this is not over, because there is majority support in that warehouse. The only reason that the workers may not win on that vote tomorrow is because Amazon had all the money and all the control in the world to be able to even, thumb their nose at the National Mediation Board and put a mailbox with a tent around it saying, vote here. All of that stuff, by the way, would get fixed under the PRO Act, because you don't wait until the end of the process. Amazon thinks they can just wait out the workers and demoralize them and hopefully eke out a win for the company, and then have the workers either leave because it's such awful conditions that actually the turnover rate is 100% in a year. And so they're hoping that if they do all these illegal things and get slapped on the hand afterwards, it's not going to matter, because they'll just demoralize everybody and make the union drive go away. That's not going to happen. So whether those workers win in the vote tomorrow or not, they've already won, because they have changed that whole community, and that community is going to make sure that they hold Amazon accountable. And other people around this country now understand what the problem is, which is going to increase our power to get the PRO Act done. And it all moves forward in that way. His statement was BS, and he doesn't really believe it. But even Rubio was moved to say that he supports the Amazon workers. Okay. But this is a product of the labor movement being on the move. Conducting strikes, showing our power, organizing, raising the issue of essential workers, raising the issue of safety during coronavirus. And we have this shared experience now that we can build upon as well. And it is no small thing that we have a president who's willing to say, I'm a union guy, and actually back that up with actions like making the PRO Act central to his infrastructure plan. Because his infrastructure plan doesn't work unless workers have the power to get the value out of what they're creating for our whole country to use.
No, you're absolutely spot on. And real quick, since you brought up the infrastructure plan, and that's where we started, the aviation industry needs mass upgrades. Our airports are not great. I always go back to Thomas Friedman, who said he went from Beijing to LAX. It was like going from the Jetsons to the Flintstones. I don't necessarily like being the Flintstones. So mass investment is what we need.
Yeah, I mean, the airports are not much better than our roads and bridges, and it all needs to be upgraded. And it is time. I think was it Andy Levin who was just saying it's like having a house and saying that you're not going to upkeep the stairs in that house. Like, it doesn't make any sense. So we've got to invest, and yeah, I'm super excited about the fact that airports are going to be modernized and infrastructure is going to be modernized there. And it's crazy actually that the United States will be so far behind the rest of the world at this point, because we haven't made the kind of investments that are necessary.
Yeah, but here's the thing. It still has to get past the Senate. So what do you think the chances of an infrastructure plan getting through, given the fact that McConnell has come out and said, you're not getting anything from us?
So first of all, oh my God, we have got to stop listening to McConnell. McConnell doesn't matter.
I didn't bring up the other guy who said that bill's cruel and heartless.
Yeah. So listen, I mean, he doesn't have any power if we put pressure on his caucus. And, I saw this on sort of a smaller level. We got so much support for our payroll support program for a workers first package in the two previous relief bills in the CARES Act and in the emergency relief in December. We had so much bipartisan support for that because we were out there holding everyone accountable. We also pressured our corporations to be on the same page with us. So we brought that power of capital to the table as well. But I mean, that's what we can do here. And if you look at what's happening right now and the kind of actions that the GOP is taking, which is about having less participation, trying to not make people's lives better, but trying to make it harder for people to participate in our democracy, this is the time when we need to be pushing forward and getting things done. So people are seeing the effects of the American Rescue Plan. And I'll tell you, the day that I was in Bessemer was the day that stimulus checks were hitting. And every single person had a story about what that meant to them and how they had been just hanging on throughout the year and what a difference that made in their lives. And they were standing a little taller that day. I mean, I just think about the way that empowered people, even in their own lives, that they could go home and tell their kids, hey, we're going to eat well tonight, right? And so when we get these results, people are more likely to understand why their vote matters, why their action mattered, and that's going to raise expectations. And we're already seeing that happen. And I just want to note that we're already seeing the White House shift on the filibuster, right? Politics have been shifting right in front of our very eyes because people are not giving up. They're continuing to demand better. And our expectations have been raised because of the campaign like Bernie Sanders ran. Right. And so anyway, I just think, Rick, it's really, really important that we try to put our blinders on with McConnell and focus on the rest of his caucus, focus on the people in the House. Brian Fitzpatrick, for example, for the PRO Act. Hey, Brian, you're going to be for the PRO Act, but not for this infrastructure plan that's going to help your district as well? I don't think so. I think we're going to get Republicans on this, and we got to keep up the pressure on it. And the last thing we can do is say, oh, they're never gonna, because all that does is give them an excuse not to.
That's a good point.
And
we got to force them. We got to absolutely force them into it. You're right. Sarah, I appreciate the time. As always, great talking with you. Thank you for your passion. Thank you for your fight. Always great having you on.
Thanks, Rick. Okay. Good night.
Thanks so much. Sara Nelson, president of the Association of Flight Attendants, CWA. Quick break. Right back. Stick around.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
Hello, I'm David Philman, Executive Director of AFSCME Council 13, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. A union of over 1.4 million strong and growing, AFSCME is gaining improvements in the workplace all across America. And right here in the Commonwealth, more than 95,000 AFSCME members make Pennsylvania happen. Highways, libraries, hospitals, parks, offices, prisons, classrooms, museums, courtrooms. You'll find AFSCME members at work in all these places and many more.
I make Pennsylvania happen every day.
I make Pennsylvania happen every day.
Today's AFSCME members take on public service jobs as diverse as they are, not for the recognition, but for a better Pennsylvania. For more information, please visit our website at AFSCME13.org. Labor is changing, so is your labor union. We are AFSCME.
We make Pennsylvania happen!
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Ralph Waldo Emerson told of a dinner guest who went on and on about the virtue of honesty, offering his own life as a model of perfect rectitude. The louder he talked of his honor, said Emerson, the faster we counted our spoons. That's my reaction to the cacophony of phony piety arising from Republican governors and legislators who are trying to enact more than 250 new state laws to stop Black, Latino, Asian American, Indigenous, and other non-Caucasian voters from casting ballots. Yet they proclaim, we're not racist, we're righteous crusaders protecting the sanctity of the vote. Really? So why are they specifically targeting people of color with their repressive voting restrictions? For example, panicky Republican lawmakers in Georgia tried to outlaw any early voting on Sundays. Odd. Why? It's a flagrantly racist attack on the black church. For years, a joyous civic tradition called Souls to the Polls has played out in Southern black churches on Sundays prior to Election Day. After the sermon and prayers, congregants, ministers, musicians, and others in the church family travel in a caravan to early voting locations to cast ballots. It turns voting into a civic, spiritual, and fun experience. What kind of shriveled soul tries to kill that? Apparently, the same shameful souls in the Georgia GOP who want to stop local groups from providing water and snacks to citizens forced to wait for hours in line to vote. They're actually trying to make it a crime to give water to thirsty voters. Hey, Republicans, what would Jesus do? This is Jim Hightower saying the goal and duty of every public official ought to be to maximize voter turnout. After all, the more Americans who vote, the stronger our democracy. But there's the ugly political truth. Republican officials no longer support democracy. The Hightower Radio Lowdown is brought to you by the Lowdown Happy Hour, live streamed from the Chat and Chew Cafe. Details at hightowerlowdown.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I love this story. And it's one of those things I thought was an April Fool's joke. I actually thought it was an April Fool's joke. Evidently, Democratic Representative Jeremy Gray of Opelika, Alabama, put forth piece of legislation that would undo the state's ban on yoga. Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a joke, but evidently in the state of Alabama, yoga is illegal in the schools because I guess they believe that it would promote Hinduism and meditation, and you can't have that. I'm here to share some thoughts on, the Hindu, the meditation, the yoga, our yoga instructor and good friend, Raw Story reporter, Sara Burris. Sara, thanks for taking time for us.
Hello. Namaste. Oh, we can't have that non-Jesus stuff going on.
I gotta wonder if this is just one of those things. I thought it was a joke. I really did. I thought it was a joke. And then I looked it up and I'm going, no, it's not a joke. They're serious. They can't do yoga in school.
I don't know why it would matter, but I guess
Hindu.
I don't know, any kind of...
It would promote Hinduism and promote meditation, and that's bad. That's anti-Christian.
Would it really
No,
promote
it's not.
Hinduism? I feel like it just promotes the need for a massage.
It promotes the need. Look, Alabama, stupid. I was stumbling all over this today, going, that's got to be a joke. I mean, it is April Fool's Day after all. It's got to be a bad one. And I went and I found it in a number of places. I'm going, damn, it's true.
I know. I feel like because we didn't have an April Fool's Day last year, I feel like this year everybody kind of went, all out. And then there were some things that were really stupid that weren't actually April Fool's Day jokes. And you're like, oh, no, that's just Republicans.
Yeah. So were there any good April Fool's jokes today?
My favorite one, I will say, is the Biden White House posted a job posting that was offering $100,000 to I think $115,000 salary for a dog trainer.
One that's going to stop the dog from dumping on the carpet?
Yes. So that one was like, oh, that's clever. That's nice. There were a bunch of brands that did some weird stuff. Heinz Ketchup did a whole thing about how they were going to create a gravy that had a combination of gravy and ocean spray cranberries in it, because it's like, well, you mix them together on your plate anyway. So
wow,
why not just have a jar of it?
See, the thing is, I don't see that as a joke. I think somebody would actually, I don't know, come up with that.
Right.
I mean, I've seen some really bizarre combinations. So Yeah, no, I don't like cranberry anyway. So cranberry gravy.
Bud Light did a pizza flavored beer.
Okay.
Yeah. The Outback lipstick collection. The colors are based on the color of your steak, the cook of your steak. Like, oh, I'll have the medium rare, please.
So mine would be black then. I would have the black lipstick because I wanted charcoal.
You want it smoked?
I want it burnt.
Oh my gosh. You want it dead 7 times over.
Oh yeah, I don't want it talking back to me or bleeding at me. No thanks. I want it done.
No mad cow for you.
So those are the good ones?
Those are the ones that I like.
Okay.
Personally. The cauliflower flavored Pete's was kind of funny. I liked all the ones that were just goofy and kind of like, there was one that was out of a British company that said that they created a lawnmower with a treadmill behind it, so you can exercise and mow your lawn at the same time. And you're like, but wait, don't push your lawnmower and walk. But I thought that was hilarious. That was a little bit more, nuanced.
Yeah. That's actually pretty funny.
Almost every year for the last 36 years, I've called my mother and told her that actually it's just been since I've been 16, really. I've called her and told her that I was pregnant.
Yeah.
And I didn't last year because.
And she called you and
COVID.
asked if you were pregnant. Is that what that is?
Right. And I forgot to today. I was like, oh, I should text her, and then I was like, no, I have stuff to do, and then it just got,
Yeah, I got stuff to do. That's when you know you've become your mother.
I know, when you're like, I can't play any pranks with my mother this year. I have to work.
Well, happy April Fool's Day to you and yours, even though you didn't actually participate. So let's get to the big stories. I love the fact that the judge didn't release the guy who had the assassinate AOC message. I think none of these people should be released. I think they should all be sitting behind bars. But it's a start. We got one.
Yeah, Garrett with 1T Miller. And the judge, Garrett and his lawyer pitched the judge saying, look, I didn't really do anything that was that bad at the Capitol. I went there, I was in there, but I didn't tear anything up. I just took some pictures and, then I left. And the judge was like, well, yeah, but it's more about what happened after that. This is the same guy who, the girl that was shot by the Secret Service agents, the Garrett Miller tried to find him because he wanted to, he's convinced, he was like, it's a black guy, we're going to lynch him, we're going to string him up, like all of this really racist language. And the guy, like, he's made actual efforts to try and find this guy. And so it's just, that's one of those things where he has a history of making assassination comments. He, went to the Capitol raid, and then he's been trying to look for the cop that shot somebody he knew whenever she was trying to break into the house. And, so this is one of those guys who I think, the judge reasonably could say, no, you're really a cut above the rest.
Yeah, you're special.
This guy's a little bit too much.
Yeah, you're special. Now, I find it interesting that that's the argument that they made. Oh, I just went and take some pictures. It's kind of the revisionist history that Trump gave to Laura Ingraham the other day, where there was zero threat. It was zero threat. They just went in. They were hugging and kissing the police. They had great relationships.
Yeah, really hugging and kissing those police officers with giant lacrosse sticks and metal poles, flag poles that they were beating them with.
Yeah.
Real friendly, real huggy and kissy there.
Yeah, I don't know what goes for a great relationship in Trump's family, but stabbing them with a flagpole or hitting them in the head with a fire extinguisher, I don't know that that's real affection.
I mean, given that I think it was Marla Maples' book where she talked about how abusive he was and how awful he was, particularly after he got his hair plugged. She said that he was in so much pain and he was screaming and throwing a big fit. But that is her allegation. I want to say allegedly.
Because you don't want to get
so
sued.
none of us get sued.
Yeah, you don't want to help his defense fund.
Right. So I don't know. Maybe that's just part of his thing. He sees somebody beating somebody with a pole, and he's like, foreplay.
Well, everyone's got their things. Let's move along. Marjorie Taylor Greene, still oddly enough, still in the news. I'm going to go back and reiterate. I think it was a huge mistake by the Democrats to throw her off the Labor and Education Committee. I think she should be right there front and center so we could see stupid live every day. But she's still out there, trying to get things not passed, like the bill she offered to, I guess today, is it? To fire Fauci and to ban the mark of the beast vaccine passports.
Well, so the bill is not exactly to fire Fauci, because Fauci works for the NIH. And so the NIH governs itself. You can't have Congress or the White House even, because there was this whole conversation about Trump saying that he wanted to fire Fauci if he was reelected. And everybody was like, actually, you can't. NIH would have to do it. So what the bill does, and I will give it to her, she actually asked somebody about this. So clearly she knows a little bit more than the average person, because I had to look it up. But the bill would reduce his salary down to $0. So.
And despite her, I would stay even if they did that.
Right? That's the thing. Like, Fauci's 900 years old. Like, he's older than water. That's why he's so good at vaccines and viruses, because he's seen them all. And so I'm sure he's doing okay in life.
Yeah, I'm sure he's fine.
But so yeah, give him $0 as a salary.
Yeah, well,
whatever, Marjorie.
I think if that passed, I think we could muster up a GoFundMe account to keep him on.
Oh, I'm pretty sure we could. I bet it would be a whole lot more money than what he's being paid right now.
No, she's flipping out over these the vaccine passports, and I got to be honest, I'm uncomfortable with anything that's papers, please. I'm uncomfortable with the fact that the Democrats tried to silence her by taking her off the committees. I'm uncomfortable with banning her on Twitter. I want to see crazy speak. I want to go, see, this is why we need more education funding. This is the kids. This is what you don't want to be. Exhibit A. I don't know when liberals got this. We need to silence people. I want them to speak. I want them to show how stupid they are. Prove how brilliant you are to me by just keep yapping at the jaws. And this is part of that.
Yeah, the good news is she's still really good at continuing that, whether or not she's on the Ed committee or not. So that's the good part of it. But she's a little bit special.
Yeah.
And I think she's trying to find something to do. And this is what she's come up with, is this kind of stuff. I mean, there are a bunch of people who are opposing the idea of the vaccine card. People are already getting them.
Yeah.
So, like, my mom laminated mine for me because I'm home this week. And so why not just, like, flash that guy and be like, hey, I can leave the country. See ya.
No, I'm a little uncomfortable by it, but I understand the need for it. I understand that you're going to want to try and
flee the
control
country.
Things.
But I think calling it the mark of the beast is a little excessive. This is not like a thing on your forehead, and this is the idea of calling it the mark of the beast, which is what Marjorie Taylor Greene said. It's like, okay, y'all called it that with Social Security number.
Right.
You called it with barcodes. When people started using barcodes to check things out at the supermarket, that was a big thing. QR codes. They said those are the market. It's just they keep coming up with any kind of identifying information for a person.
Yeah. Now, if they want to tattoo it across my forehead, I really have a problem with that.
Right.
I mean, that would then be, I might go with her on that.
I mean,
but giving you a card while I'm not comfortable with it,
give me a card so that I can go to the beach.
There you
That's
go.
all that matters to me.
I'm still a little uncomfortable with it. Let's move on. Big topic of the day. How weird is this Matt Gaetz story getting? Every time I turn around, I'm going, it's getting weirder and weirder. And look, I generally don't care about, people's sexual prowess or whatever they do. If he did take a 17-year-old across state lines and did have sex with her, then dummy, you get what you get. But this goes a lot deeper than that, it looks like.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing if you're, just statutory rape of a teenager, but this has become this much, much bigger thing. And one of the articles last night from ABC News said that when they were talking about the women that he has been with, it said at least one, which to me means there's more than one. There is at least one, there might be more. Then the development today was that they found out that he was involved in the identification IDs, the fake ID scandal that the old tax collector in Seminole County, Florida, was indicted on. So basically what happened is this old tax collector got arrested because it all started because he started fighting back against his opponent who was trying to run against him. And he came up with all of this fake stuff, and the police figured it out. And so they came to, indict him for, a slew of federal crimes because he sent stuff through the mail and he, all of that. And when they arrested him, they found all these fake IDs in his car. And they realized that every time somebody came in to get a new driver's license, he was keeping the old driver's licenses and then using them to make new ones with his name on it, maybe with other people's names on it. Maybe there were fake IDs for, sex trafficking. I don't really know. They haven't, talked about specifics for this yet. But the story today from CNN was that Gaetz was actually involved in that fake ID effort as well, which is weird because Gaetz is like a really old man. So with his tall ass hair.
Yeah. No, I don't know that he's that old. I mean, the fact that his father was wired up to, you go, how crazy is this?
Yeah, that's the thing that made it even weirder is his excuse for why he's the subject of this Justice Department investigation is because a former Justice Department official tried to bribe him into making the scandal disappear. And what's weird is it's like, I guess the person who worked at the Justice Department, who's obviously no longer there, heard about the investigation through the Justice Department channels because that hadn't been reported. On the date that Gaetz mentioned it, the first text message to his dad was sent on March 16th, and nobody in the country knew about this other than, the tax collector dude in Florida. And, I don't know if the DOJ approached Matt Gaetz and said, congratulations, don't leave the country because you might be indicted. And so they wired up his dad. And so now the FBI is investigating the extortion piece of this. But if you are being extorted to pay somebody to get you out of the sex trafficking investigation, that really just confirms the sex trafficking investigation. Like, that's the thing here is if this is worth trying to extort somebody over, then this is a serious deal.
Right.
And Matt Gaetz just basically admitted to it.
Yeah, I don't see good things happening from him in the near future.
No,
I remember when
get.
before this broke, there was a story that came out that said he's thinking about retiring and going into media.
Yes.
And I tweeted out, I go, well, this is a perfect place for a narcissist like him to go. And, this is what they want. It's not about governing. It's not about helping people. It's about his stardom. It's about, his ego. And then, hours later, you then
5 hours later,
exactly.
This breaks.
You go bang, and I'm going, well, this explains a lot.
Yeah, there you go. Now we know why he wants to quit and go work for Newsmax. And when Newsmax was asked, are you still going to hire this guy? He's, arrested and indicted on charges of sex trafficking and fake IDs and stuff. And they were like, we don't talk about our negotiations with possible staff.
Yeah.
So,
No, I think they're gonna grab him up. He'll come cheap.
But what's funny is Gates has been saying, oh yeah, they're beating down my door now. All these right-wing news stations, they want to hire me. And Fox News, when somebody asked Fox News about it, they were like, no, we're good.
No, we're good. No, I mean, wasn't that one of the weirdest interviews you ever saw with him and Tucker Carlson?
Oh my gosh, right? Like that's like another chapter of this that just keeps getting weirder and weirder. He gets on Tucker Carlson and he brings Tucker into this whole thing where he's like, I'm not the only person on screen who's ever been falsely accused of sexual, sexual abuse or sexual impropriety or something like that. And while there were sexual harassment allegations against Tucker from some of the in that whole Fox News scandal, nobody really knew about Tucker Carlson's accusations of some kind of sexual abuse. And apparently that's a story from like 20 years ago that nobody ever knew about. Right. And now it's like everywhere and everyone's like, oh, wait, tell me more, Tucker, about how you made that disappear. And so he brought him into that. And then he made some comment about how Tucker and Tucker's wife and Matt Gaetz and I guess one of the girls had dinner one night, and Tucker's like, I have no memory of this.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
It's like, oh, you don't want to be hauled into a grand jury. I understand.
No, don't know what you're talking about. Nip that right off in the bud.
Don't talk to me. Call my lawyer.
Yeah, that's one of those. That's a drowning man reaching for an anchor there.
Yeah. So the news, the sources at Fox News are saying that Tucker's pissed, which, how can you not be?
Yeah, how can you not be? So, hey, good fun. At least they've got their problems to deal with. I'm glad to see Joe Biden, doing the yeoman's work. We got the rescue plan pushed through. Now this infrastructure plan. Any thoughts on awesome. the jobs plan?
It would be so nice if we could pass it. I mean, just for the idea of having pipes that were safe to get our water through. We've talked before about some of the places in the country, Oklahoma in particular, in rural areas, the sewage pipes are made of clay and they're just disintegrating because they're 100 years old. Rural broadband, like all of these things. Yes, there is a green energy component of it that Biden is talking about, but it's all about training, people and getting jobs and shovel-ready projects and things that build. This is Biden's New Deal. This is the next generation of a New Deal, and it's something the country's needed for a very, very long time. So I really wish it would pass.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the Republicans try and block this. And earlier we talked with Sara Nelson, who's like, "No, we can't give up on the Republicans. We got to keep pressure on them." And look, I agree with her. On one vein, you got to keep pressure on them. You got to know that you got to let them know that we're paying attention. I just don't expect anything from them. And McConnell today came out and said as much. We're not helping you. You're getting nothing from us.
Yeah, McConnell basically said he's going to ensure that his entire caucus doesn't vote for it. And at that point, you're like, okay, well then you shouldn't have any credit whatsoever. Like, if you're voting against it, then why are we sending money to you? I realize that is not the right thing to do.
No, this is a great point. No, it's one of those things where you go, this is what Trump did, with the tax bill. You look at the SALT that they're fighting over right now, that they're trying to divide the Democrats over. They capped the state and local taxes that people can deduct at $10,000, targeting New York, New Jersey, and California explicitly. 3 very solidly Democratic states, and they did that as a Machiavellian move. We're going to punish our opponents, and this is one of those things where you saw Madison Cawthorn, I think his name is, taking credit for money coming into the state. Roger Wicker down in Mississippi, same thing. Mm-hmm. They didn't vote for it. So they should get none of it. Their states should get nothing.
And I mean, especially their districts. Like, it would be very easy to single out that specific district, even the ones that are gerrymandered from here to next Tuesday. So that would be the spiteful and malicious thing to do. But realistically, there are people in Oklahoma who need pipes for their sewage that are collapsing. And you would think that with all of these problems, and honestly, if I was going to make a big push, a big campaign push for this, I would start isolating projects down to the state level and say, hey, Oklahoma, here are the things we want to do for you. You know, tell James Lankford, tell Jim and Hoff. Mississippi, these are the things we want to do for you. And really isolate it by each state so that people know this bridge, this road, very specifically, and how it will benefit their community beyond just like, you know, $500 billion here and $30 billion there. It's more of a nebulous idea. But if you specifically talk about people's communities, they connect to it a lot better.
No, you're absolutely right. In fact, I remember, you know, back during the Obama, the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act thing, that you would go by work sites where they were building projects, and they actually had, you know, the emblem and the name brought to you by the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. And it was one of those things where you go, yeah, you gotta do a much better job of, look what we did for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, based on what Biden has been doing to talk about the stimulus project, I feel like that is something that he would really think about and consider to promote the infrastructure plan as well.
Yeah, well, we'll see how it goes. I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful the PRO Act stays in it because we need it. I'm looking forward to getting something done there. But at the end of it, we got lots of things. And since Joe Biden actually listens to the program, he fired Peter Robb like I asked. Day one, he included the PRO Act in the infrastructure plan. Did that. Well, this is something else for him to listen to. Slap your name all over it. Brought to you by Joe Biden. And have his big grin with fingers pointing. Pow! Absolutely. That's what I want to see.
I do too. That'd be awesome.
Like get that cowboy hat down in Oklahoma with the big white grin, the pointing the fingers. I'm right there. There you go, Joe. There's your next assignment. Good stuff. Sarah, I appreciate the time. Fun as always.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
You as well. Our good friend Sarah Burris, reporter at Raw Story. Make sure you check out her work, rawstory.com. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
It's a once-in-a-generation investment in America, unlike anything we've seen or done since we built the interstate highway system and the space race decades ago. In fact, it's the largest American jobs investment since World War II.
Green News Report special coverage. President Biden unveils sweeping American jobs plan to rebuild the nation's infrastructure and take on the climate crisis.
That special coverage straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Democrats want to sell this a $3 trillion infrastructure plan, which includes energy efficiency in buildings, 5G, rural broadband, retraining of workers, lots of stuff, roads, bridges, ports, rail lines, redoing the electrical grid, vehicle charging stations. It sounds very ambitious considering the last guy couldn't build a wall.
This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, at long last, finally, an infrastructure bill that you can be excited about.
Oh, definitely.
Calm down there.
President Joe Biden unveiled a sweeping infrastructure jobs plan in a speech in Pittsburgh on Wednesday. His American Jobs Plan proposes spending $2 trillion over 8 years to rebuild America's crumbling infrastructure, part of his Build Back Better pledge, a long list of projects that economists project would create millions of jobs in the short run and strengthen American global competitiveness in the long run. It would also begin to address accelerating climate impacts that already are costing Americans billions in damages every year and set the nation on the path to a net zero emissions economy by 2050. It is truly huge, with a 25-page White House fact sheet, but here's a broad overview. It would rebuild and update America's decaying physical infrastructure, repairing roads, bridges, ports, airports, railways, highways, schools, water systems, flood controls, and more, with a focus on climate resilience, modernize the electric power grid, and set a national clean electricity standard to phase out fossil fuels and reach 100% carbon-free electricity by 2035. Replace all lead water service lines.
Well, that sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, and ensure all Americans have access to affordable broadband internet service. It would transform the nation's largest source of greenhouse gas emissions, our transportation system, away from fossil fuels by boosting domestic electric vehicle manufacturing, adoption, and investing in a national electric vehicle charging network by 2030. Use the power of the government purse to revive U.S. manufacturing and domestic supply chains by electrifying the entire federal vehicle fleet, and invest in advanced clean energy research and development to boost U.S. global competitiveness and productivity and counter China's moves to dominate the global clean tech market.
That sounds like a lot.
It is. It would also employ American workers to plug abandoned oil and gas wells and coal mines and ensure a just transition for fossil fuel communities. It would pay farmers to sequester carbon and restore soils, establish a civilian climate corps to employ people to restore landscapes and ecosystem services, clean up pollution, and prepare communities for resilience against coming global warming impacts. Biden would fund this infrastructure jobs plan by increasing taxes on corporations.
Uh-oh.
Economists project the proposal will create millions of good-paying jobs across the country and would reduce the national debt.
Well, that's fine, but you're going to raise taxes on corporations?
Well, now it heads to the meat grinder of Congress.
Uh-oh.
Biden said he welcomes Republican input, but Republicans have signaled they plan to block it as too expensive.
Of course.
But economists say that in general, every $1 spent on public investments like this returns roughly $2 in economic benefits. Now, scientists are warning ever more urgently that time is running out for us to act with the speed and scope necessary to curtail the worst consequences of man-made climate change. Biden's proposal establishes the groundwork for equitably decarbonizing the U.S. economy by 2050, a multi-generational challenge. Biden closed his speech in Pittsburgh with this.
Imagine what we can do. Imagine knowing that you're handing your children and grandchildren a country that will lead the world in producing clean energy technology and will need to address one of the biggest threats of our time. That's what we'll do. If we act now, in 50 years, people are going to look back and say, this was the moment that America won the future.
Imagine that. Now all we have to do is get the progressive Democrats who say this is not nearly enough and the conservative Democrats who say this is too expensive and completely ignore the Republicans because they're not going to go along with anything. Other than that, get this through Congress, get this through the filibuster in the Senate, and everything will work out just fine.
Easy peasy.
For much more on that story and all of them that we couldn't cover today because of it, please check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find, follow, and share us planet-wide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So our Supreme Court unanimously came up with a decision today. Evidently, they're going to permit the FCC to loosen media ownership rules. I think a horrible, horrible idea. But evidently, Justice Kavanaugh, he said that it was reasonable that the FCC reviewed the ownership rules and found that repealing and modifying them was, quote, not likely to harm minority and female ownership. I'm guessing that was the direction that the case was going after. He added that the FCC reasoned that the historical justification for those ownership rules no longer apply in today's media market, and that permitting efficient combinations of radio stations, television stations, and newspapers would benefit consumers. I don't know about that. I think it'll benefit those who want to control the message and the big moneyed corporations who will control all this stuff. I don't know about what consumers or citizens are going to get out of it. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the top stories of the day, our good friend, former Congressman Bob Ney. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Well, thank you, Rick.
So what do you think about, one company owning all of the radio and TV stations in a city? Is that a good idea?
First of all, it's shocking that it was unanimous. Rather shocking.
I was shocked.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw it was unanimous, I'm like, you've got to be kidding. Can't there be one person? You can go back historically. By the way, my dad started in 1954 in television at an NBC affiliate. And at that time, back during that time, there was a family that owned the newspaper in the Ohio side. Then it owned across the river the TV station. It owned the 2 radio stations and 2 other newspapers within 2 state borders. They owned it all. Obviously, that is a problem. Then later on, of course, as time went on, it broke up and other people owned different entities. And I think that forms competition, frankly.
Right.
Let's face it. What they have done is it's just a blow to the people who have always argued that consolidation is going to, be at the expense, obviously, of minority and female media ownership these days, in the modern market. But on top of it, it's going to be at the expense of the people in general, because it's going to allow control, a lot of control, and that will wipe away, rates, competition, but also on the public policy vein, you can have one person that's going to say, well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take this route. Now, it might be to the left, it might be to the right, I don't know, but whichever way it goes, it's not going to be healthy.
No, and this is where, and it also will take away local control. Because, I go back to Bill Clinton and with the telecom bill of 96. That basically allowed stations to buy up huge numbers of stations. If I remember right at the time, you could only own something like 40, and then boom, you ended up with Clear Channel at 1,300.
Yes.
I don't know that that's good for A, competition, or B, local control of anything, because they just get bought up.
Right.
Not a good thing. Not a good thing in my view. But I was shocked at the 9-0 decision.
Well, and we've got to look too that this happened in 2017. It was Republican-dominated FCC, Federal Communications Commission,
right.
And that was the entity at that time that just a few years ago determined that consolidation would help owners of traditional media who were losing out to internet-based competitors. So that's what they took this stand on. Well, they're losing out to internet-based competitors, so we've got to make them more powerful. It's just amazing. The theory to it just doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah, I'm not a good thing. Let's move on. The big news of the day for me, Mitch McConnell, basically dropping the hammer, saying any bipartisanship, which we already knew, but he's now given the Democrats a gift and said, you're getting nothing, and now you know it.
Well, look, at some point in time, the Democratic side, if it gets no cooperation, period, has to just do what it does, explain what it does, get the thinking out to the people of what they've done, verify it, justify it. Don't do what happened on the ACA with the Obamacare, where all of a sudden they said, "Well, yeah, maybe we should have done this, or maybe we should have done that." And of course, the Republicans jumped in on that and seized an opportunity to pick up seats. If people say, "Well, it's one party rule," well, if they're doing things, they don't get cooperation from the other party, then they're just going to have one party rule for what they think is an appropriate agenda to help people.
Yeah.
and you justify it, and you do your grassroots, and
and this is what you run on. I've been saying, and maybe you'll agree with me, if they don't get this through, if we don't get an infrastructure plan through, and I think now is the time it has to be done. If you don't get it through, 2022 is going to be a slaughter.
Correct. Look, the stimulus plan had to happen. The money for vaccinations, that had to happen. And some people say, well, we don't have to have infrastructure. We do. We are crumbling. We are literally crumbling across the United States. And we have unsafe bridges. We have, obviously roadways that need more repair. And also different projects that open up. And we could cite so many across the United States in the past from infrastructure bills, Rick, that opened up avenues that created more jobs, not just the immediate jobs of construction and constructing these projects, but also long term.
Yep.
I can't imagine. It shocked me, having been on the Transportation Committee, and I've been through two major infrastructure bills in my 11 years, two of them. It shocked me that Trump didn't seize the opportunity to have an amazing honeymoon effect right when he got in with an infrastructure bill.
Oh, absolutely, because he would have gotten anything he wanted. And what's interesting to me is they were talking about a $2 trillion infrastructure bill back, in 15 to 16. If you remember, that was what he threw out there. We're going to get $2 trillion, and there were a bunch of Republicans on board. It'll be interesting to see how many we get. I think there'll be some in the House, a handful, but I don't think there'll be many.
But they will get people aboard on a bill because they're getting projects for their districts, and it's a good thing. I mean, this is the normal kumbaya bill, and if the Democratic side doesn't do it, they're going to get blamed for the lack of infrastructure or
not doing anything.
They're going to get blamed for it.
Yeah, I mean, they got to get something done one way or another.
And they can say, well, Trump didn't do it, but that's not going to count.
Nope, doesn't matter. As I said at the beginning, people vote on how well they're doing at that moment. If they're happy, if they're doing well, they're going to vote to keep whoever's in power. It's that simple.
And the one thing that I found out in 11 years, and I think other people know, because we discussed this at the time, and the Democratic side did the same thing. If you want to talk about, people going to the pumps and they pay a gas tax, but if you want to talk about the fact that you can sell that because of what they're getting in return in order to drive, in order to have projects, it is a sellable item. One of the most sellable items that you'll see out there.
Yeah. No, and in fact, in the fact sheet that the Biden administration put out, they say that, they're going to pave like 20,000 miles of road. That sounds like a lot, but when you look at the reality is they claim 173,000 miles of road and highway are in poor condition. They're going to do 10,000 bridges, but they say that 45,000 bridges are in poor condition. This is a start. And it sounds like a huge number, $2 trillion. And when I say it should have been more, this is why you're talking about 20,000 of 170,000, 173,000 total miles. That's just a drop in the bucket.
Correct, and it's an immediate boost because you have your workers, obviously, who are getting work out of this, but also the spin-off jobs, the people that haul material, all the material that's used, the people that manufacture asphalt, concrete. I mean, you can keep going with this, and the spin-off jobs are great.
Yeah. So what do you say to the last guy had a statement today put out on one of these right-wing news networks, said that that Biden's bill is cruel and heartless because it raises taxes and it's just going to make the Chinese and foreign countries better and it's going to create more outsourcing.
On infrastructure?
Yeah.
They've got to be kidding.
No, that was his statement.
It's crazy. I mean, these are the bills that are sellable items to the public. I've been through it. I mean, I campaigned on it, as many people did that I served with. You put it right in your ads. Here's the highway I built, as if I actually went in and did the asphalt myself.
But you had a picture of yourself with a hard hat.
You better believe it. And the highway and people on TV thanking us for it.
Yep.
I mean, it's a look. Yes, there's a political side to it, of course, But on top of it, you want to talk about public policy, true public policy of supplying jobs, and also the long-term benefits of what they're going to do, and obviously the safety factor for people.
Yeah, I mean, in the old days, this used to be the minimum. Used to be the minimum of what you could expect from it. Yeah, there was a lot of hot air, a lot of arguing, a lot of division, but they all agreed make people happy by letting them drive on decent roads.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, we'll see how this.
You want to make people angry. Don't fix the roads and don't have the garbage picked up and see what happens to you.
Yeah, no,
if you're in charge.
No, we'll see. We'll see how this goes because I expect a handful of Republicans in the House will come along. I don't expect any in the Senate. And we'll see if the Democrats get their stuff in line. Which brings me, Tina Smith today, the senator from Minnesota, she came out and said, it's time to move. She's ready to move on the filibuster, hook, line, and sinker. It's got to go. It's destroying democracy. Joe Biden, Joe Manchin. I'm hoping people are pressuring him, but he was down at the border, I guess, recently and said it's past time to do immigration reform.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You think?
In fact,
you think it's time to do it's been time for the last 40 years.
I was going to say it was past time in 1995, okay, when I was there. I mean, it's been past time forever. And I think they did announce today that they've got some type of bipartisan bill about, quote, the surge. That came from the House, I think, though. But yes, Senator Tina Smith said that she was shifting her position, actually.
Yep.
Is what she would be doing. And, it's in fact, I think she said it was something like it was too strong to ignore now. And she shifted her position on it.
No, the fact
and of course, Manchin will be critical.
No, he will be, and so will Feinstein and a couple of others. But the fact that Mitch McConnell has come out and said, under no circumstances am I working with you, that's got to be the illusion that they held on to, that there was going to be some bipartisanship, and that they believe in this, we can do this because we're smarter or better, or we're high statesmen or whatever. That's got to go out the window now. Now we got to get things done, or we're going to get slaughtered in 22.
Well, also let's look at it. And I would be called crazy for what I'm about to say, but if you're Mitch McConnell, and you think you're going to take back the Senate, you have an option to take back midterms. Why would you not want to, bear through everything, fight the good fight, and get rid of the filibuster now so the Democratic side doesn't have it if you take control? That's number one. Number two, just because the filibuster is gone doesn't mean that every single bill is going to have unanimous Democratic support. There might be a couple of on the Democratic side that don't like a certain piece of legislation. So I think that the thinking is a coward's political thinking by McConnell. He should want this gone to benefit him if he thinks he can take back control.
And that's the thing. But does he really think he's going to be able to take back control if this goes the way I hope it will go? Look, if you spend this kind of money, you pump that kind of investment into this country, you get people back to work, you give them the ability to organize and join unions and get prevailing wage for the work that they're doing, you're going to make people's lives better. They're going to be much happier. They're going to vote for people in power. And right now, that's not McConnell and the Republicans. And look, McConnell and the Republicans don't have an answer for this. There's not a counter bill to going, no, this is how we should do it. All it is no, we're against it.
But in Mitch McConnell's mind, he probably believes that the Democratic side will do so many, quote, outrageous items to the left that he will be able to take back the Senate, right? In his own mind.
So to your point, he should be all in favor of letting them do all the crazy left stuff so that he can come in and swing everything back to the crazy right.
Right, exactly. So and this would be so healthy for the United States to get rid of this thing once and for all.
Yeah, I'm with you there as well. Last topic I wanted to bring up: Georgia. The Brian Kemp signed SB 202. You've now got like the Heritage Foundation out there saying, "Oh, this is just common sense election reforms," and the left is just beating up on these poor companies who've had to make statements like Coke and Delta and others. This is a blatant manipulation of business. It's not based on reality, said the Heritage Foundation. You're the guy who actually wrote the Help America Vote Act.
Right.
When you look at what they did in Georgia, do you have any problems with it?
Well, sure. I mean, I think there's a lot of problems because, look, with the Help America Vote Act that Steny Hoyer and I, put together in the House, with that act, we made sure that there was, still local control, but we did put in, certain items which we felt were good for the system that could be uniformly done, across the United States. Now, we didn't come in and try to, say, well, here's what time every poll will open or close. But we also had a commission we put in there, for guidance in the, election process. But if these states are going to do something like they're doing, then there's going to be another bill eventually along the line to set some standards again for things we didn't even have to, frankly, address, Rick, because at that time they weren't trying to, close polling or reduce the amount of boxes you could drop a ballot into. Now Georgia is setting a tone here, and if it continues, then I think there'll be a retweaking of the election law.
No, there has to be, and I blame this on John Roberts and the Supreme Court. If they don't make this Shelby versus Holder decision, I don't think a lot of this stuff gets to happen.
Right, and and as far as the businesses, this is nothing new. Look, the public for years now has gotten smart that when something happens, they lean on their buying power to get businesses to support different aspects of what they want for public policy. This shouldn't shock the business community. Just get on board and say, we want to open the voting process, not restrain it.
Yeah. Well, the reality is the business community's done this to themselves. They're the ones who have gotten involved in politics, and they've put themselves at the center of this stuff by donating, by being involved in lobbying efforts and all this stuff. So
Sure.
Of course people are gonna call on them when things go awry to say, look, you're in the middle of this, you got to make it right.
Right. Exactly.
I get it, but it's scary times. I mean, I look at this and not good stuff.
No,
Anyway,
not at all.
but we'll see where it takes us. Bob, I appreciate the time as always. Good stuff, my friend.
Thank you, Rick.
Seriously, I mean, I look at this bill and there's scary stuff in there, and it all comes back down to our Supreme Court and the decisions that they made. All bad. Frustrating and angering. Let's take a quick break. Right back to wrap things up. Stick around. You listen to the Rick Smith Show.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1963. That was the day that the New York Times ran the headline, "New York happy as papers return." The longest and largest newspaper strike in the city had ended. During the early 1960s, changes in typesetting technology were transforming how newspapers were made. Members of the International Typographical Union worried the technology would undermine their work. Around 2 in the morning on December 8th, 1962, ITU Local 6 called for a strike, demanding improved wages. Members were mostly Irish, Italian, and Jewish men. The newspaper workers at 4 papers, including the New York Times, walked off the job. 3 more major papers feared their workers would join the strike and preemptively locked out their workers. Newspapers were part of the fabric of social life of the Big Apple. In 2009, well-known journalist Nora Ephron described the impact. It was like part of the blood supply of the city was cut off. Funerals in the city saw a dip in attendance as obituaries went unprinted. In all, 17,000 newspaper workers, from typesetters to reporters to elevator operators, participated in the work action. The strike lasted 114 days. 600 million newspapers were not printed. The strike cost newspaper owners $100 million in lost advertising revenue. In the end, the the strike was finally settled, and the workers won a wage increase. But they did not win any guarantee against the implementation of new industry technology. A few months after, the newspaper The Daily Mirror closed up shop, blaming the workers and the strike for deepening its existing financial troubles. And not surprisingly, both the Times and the Herald Tribune used the strike as an excuse to double the price of a newspaper from a nickel to a dime.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, in talking about our labor situation here in the U.S., a listener in the U.K. tweeted at us, in the U.K., we officially have a 48-hour work week, but most people here work 35 to 40 hours. We also get paid breaks, 28 days paid holidays. We owe all this to the unions and those who fought so hard, even gave their lives so we could enjoy this standard of living. And this, this is the kind of stuff you talk to people in other countries, they understand. They haven't had their history eviscerated. And when you talk about holidays, you say you get 28 holidays. That's vacation. That's their vacation time. Whereas we're lucky to get a week. We're lucky to get 5 days. They get 28. And this came to me, I'll tell you, back in, I think it was 96, I met a guy from Germany. We were on a scuba diving trip down in Mexico. And the guy, young guy, probably early 20s, was on vacation. He's down in Mexico, and he said he was going to be there for 3 weeks. And I'm going, wow, I don't have that kind of vacation. He's going, oh yeah, well, I've got 5 weeks vacation. And I'm going, 5 weeks? How long you been? 6 months. He was with the company an entire 6 months because that's what they got at the time. They got 5 weeks vacation to start a job. And they encouraged people to take vacation often to keep them, mentally and mentally in tune and moral, the morale up. And what they found is people who take more vacation tend to be more productive because they're happier in their jobs. We're the ones who've been trained to believe, no, you have to show up every day, 5 days a week, 10 hours a day. You've got to work your fingers to the bone. And if you can't make it on that job, you got to get a second job and a third. And you got to, instead of going, hey, how about we fight for better wages, hours, and conditions in the jobs that we're doing. The rest of the industrialized world has kind of figured this out a little bit. And push for strong legislation to protect all workers, but make jobs better. That's the really weird thing. We've become a country that we seem okay with tearing everybody down. If we're doing poorly, we want everybody else doing poorly. Instead of us going, hey, how do we get better? How do we fight for something more? And this is why I'm so thrilled to see that the PRO Act is included in this. So I suggest highly contact your representatives, contact your senators, call them early, call them often. Say we should have the right to determine our destiny. We should have the right to join informed unions, to bargain collectively for better wages, hours, conditions. We should have a better standard of living. It is that simple in my view. Anyway, if you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast. The Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show.